Gaming is the arena that we will be in today as the Sony X95L goes against the Samsung QN95C.
I've seen things people wouldn't believe.
Hey, what's up guys? I'm Brian. This is Tech Therapy. Thank you so much for watching as we have the two top LEDs in the world, Samsung QN95C at 85 inches versus the 85-inch X95L. They will go at it in gaming. I compared these two TVs last week at Value Electronics, and many of you thought that the Sony won. More detail, more clarity, more depth of image, and I would agree. However, many of you were taken aback throughout that video that I was still choosing the Samsung QN95C as my next TV to replace my 83-inch LG C1. The reasoning for that is gaming. Now guys, before we get into the video, I will tell you your preference is yours, mine is mine. Accuracy and things of that nature don't always matter to me in terms of gaming. Director's intent matters even less, considering we have broken HDR in the majority of our titles these days. So you have to get more creative with the settings. And what I mean by that is you also need as much flexibility within those settings than ever. You need to be able to change the image. Now, gaming being more complicated if you are a PC gamer or console gamer will dictate what TV you buy. Will you use 144 hertz? Will you use ultra wide? Will you like to try 1440p, as these consoles can use it and only certain TVs can utilize it? Do you need the game bar? Do you want to see your FPS? Latency and input lag are virtually the same on many of these TVs these days. But I'm glad to report in the last few years, local dimming has been re-enabled on LEDs. A trend that Samsung started with the QN90R or Q90R was take away local dimming because of latency and input lag. That stuff is back. You can make the images look very nice. But what I want to illustrate to you is how they look together. I will let the Samsung or make the Samsung look more like the Sony, meaning I will show you accuracy initially. Sony looks very good in its game mode, but its flexibility of image is limited. I will show you that. If you're a console gamer, that might be good for you. Plug and play. Nintendo Switch, PlayStation Series X. Me as a PC gamer who games once in a while on a console, I will show you or illustrate for you what I want the image to look like. So I will let the Samsung, or again, make the Samsung look like the Sony initially, and then throughout the video, add back what makes the Samsung a Samsung. And you can decide if that's something that you like. I hope you enjoy. All right, guys, let's do it. Now, throughout this video, most of the settings being changed will be on the Samsung, which is on the left. They are both labeled. In order to get the Samsung to look as close to the Sony's picture mode or game mode, it has to be in original, which means almost all the processing is disabled. Dynamic tone mapping would be on static. And when you go over to the Sony's picture mode, as good as it looks, it does look very natural, very warm, and very accurate. Now, I'll leave the Sony in its almost out of the box, meaning reality creation is enabled to some degree. Local dimming has been raised to high. But regardless of the settings I change on the Sony, I can't make it look much different. Now, here in the Samsung, watch how saturated and colorful I can make it by going into a different preset. And throughout the video, I'm going to create a custom one at the bottom, which isn't the standard preset or the custom preset. I'll change it. But I hope to illustrate with you here is how the Sony game mode, though I like it a great deal, I'm not able to change it much regardless of the settings that are changed. Reality creation, things like that are still enabled, as I just mentioned. However, there's a shortcut menu. You're going to see half the menu cut off on the Sony, but you'll be able to see the full menu throughout the video. As you watch me go through gradation preferred, brightness preferred, enabling it, disabling it doesn't create a huge difference. I'll also try to put the color up to super high to see if I can just match the saturation of the Samsung, which obviously I can't without destroying the colors all the way. Samsung is able to create saturation and make the colors a little more cartoony without completely destroying them to where they're not recognizable. Now keep in mind throughout this video, though the game bar features are actually very similar on both, Samsung has a great deal more features. This video is more about the picture quality of the two. Now as you watch me go through the Sony, I'll keep the Samsung saturated for now in its custom one preset. Again, that's one that I created to make it look a bit more colorful and saturated. When I make the Samsung look more like the Sony, I have to disable nearly everything that the Sony still has enabled, meaning brightness preferred and dynamic tone mapping is still enabled, where on the Samsung it would be on static. So my point is I nearly need to cripple as we move into original here. You can see how it looks more similar to the Sony now. It's a bit cooler. Could be the quantum dot layer that makes it look that way, but they look more similar here. Now, I could leave the entire video like this and compare them like this. As comparisons with all content, we try to make things look the same. I don't always agree with that. What I'm trying to show you here is how the Samsung can look. And the Sony is kind of where it is. Now, it's gone a great deal of change for change in their gaming features in the last few years, and I do applaud them for that. But a Samsung is a Samsung, and this is where they flex and they show their true abilities and the ability to change the image. Now, the times where you see the picture look more natural, like you see it here, we are back in the original preset, which is the more basic one that looks just like the Sony. As we move into Street Fighter, again, we are in original preset on the Samsung, and we are in the standard game mode on the Sony. Now, the standard game mode on the Sony, it's not called standard, it's just the game mode. I do have brightness preferred. I do have it juiced up live color. All of those settings I do have on. I do want it to pop a bit more. This is Street Fighter after all. Now keep in mind, this is the Samsung kind of stripped down to look a little more like the Sony. I will change that for you in a moment, and pretty much through this video I will do that. Now whether you like what I do to it to make it look more saturated, which I'll show you in a second, or more detailed, is really a matter of preference. All I'm simply illustrating is that you are able to change the image, which is really more important to me than anything else. I think we agree that they both look fantastic. Very colorful, very detailed. They both move very well. Now we are at the 85-inch size. The X95 only comes in 85 inches. Movement is excellent. Now, I will say going from an OLED to a LED, there is a bit of an adjustment in regards to instant pixel response. Now here I'll go in and change the Samsung to make it look more saturated and give it a bit more color. Now the coolness again is primarily the camera, how it captures the Samsung, but it's interesting how you can make it look a bit more three-dimensional. Now you might not like that image, and that's okay. The point of it is you have the ability, meaning I can make the Samsung look like the Sony, but I can't make the Sony look like the Samsung, if that makes sense. Now I'm glad to say that because over the years, Samsung, with disabling local dimming throughout the years, they had very little flexibility in regards to their game mode. I do hope Sony brings back dynamic contrast for their game mode. Again, my preference is different in game to game. There are several games in here that I leave in their original preset, such as the Souls title, where I do leave it both in original and regular game mode for the Sony. The Sony will have brightness preferred through a lot of this, as I don't want it to appear dim compared to the Samsung. The Samsung is brighter. I believe the Sony is 1700 nits and a 10% window. The Samsung is about 2000. The key with this demo is how you handle going through the hallway from light to dark. This is a gorgeous title. And the fact that I'm showing you PS5 gameplay also shows you that PC gameplay on the Sony would be reduced greatly due to its feature set. Gorgeous title, looks fantastic on both here. But again, flexibility of image. Souls is a game that I would leave like this versus making it too cartoony or too animated looking. Now moving into more of a racing title here. Again, we are staying within the original preset on the Samsung. You're not seeing the game mode change much. I will go into Ratchet and Clank and show you a lot of the Sony settings shortly. Now, Dirt is the kind of game that can look washed out on LEDs, even on OLEDs, even quantum dot or MLA OLEDs. But it does have a certain look that I do like to illustrate. Now going back in, showing you how different it can look. This is again one of those titles that when you go into this more saturated look, it doesn't always look good. But you can see a bit more depth now in the track. And reality creation is enabled on the Sony, but not high enough to cause any kind of aliasing. Now I move into Days Gone. Days Gone, I believe we're still in the same original preset. Actually, nope, we are in the more poppy, contrasty preset. You can see it on Days Gone. Which would mean that it's in active as far as its tone mapping. Now, I really wish dynamic contrast, as I mentioned before, on the Sony was back. Not something a lot of people like to use in movies. However, in a gaming, it can give you a bit more three-dimensional look. It can give you a, even if it's a cartoony or just what it sounds like, give you a differential to where it looks different. It can be more saturated. It can be cleaner, depending on the title. Now, for me, when they're both in original and Sony's regular game mode, they look very similar, but they both can look a little bit washed out. That's only evident when I put the Samsung, and we'll call it from here on, Custom 1. Now, in Ghost of Tsushima, which is this next title here, we'll start in Custom 1. And you can see the difference in saturation. Now, obviously, the QD or the quantum dot LED, the Neo QLED, pushes a little more blue. But for me, I prefer the depth of the Samsung. In many ways, it's the opposite results from the comparison in the demo material in the first comparison I did last week. Special thanks to Value Electronics for allowing me to film both these beasts for about 12 hours. Please consider making your next AV purchase through them. Check the description below for all their information. They'll take great care of you. Very long day as I was here filming probably 4 different videos in the period of time that I was here. Now, as you're watching this, ask yourself which you prefer. Now, moving into original, you can see how much more pale the Samsung now looks and how similar they look. The brightness is evident on the Samsung in some of these shots, but you can agree, or at least we can all agree, that the Samsung looks more like the Sony in that original preset. The reason I don't leave it in the whole time, guys, is because there are times where I felt like the Samsung was being made defenseless in this original preset by turning everything off. There are times where the Samsung, to me, looks more like an OLED. Now, I do applaud Sony again for the improvements in the game bar and the things that they've added. What I do want from both companies is a Cinema Pro preset where I don't care what the input lag is, let us keep all of the picture settings intact. Now here you can see Ratchet and Clank. This is where I'm going to go in and really try to change the Sony for you. And you'll see me fumble through the settings on the Sony. They're more visible now. And I'll show you what changes, what doesn't change. What you'll be able to see as I go from gradation to brightness, you don't see a massive difference. It's almost like the local dimming does make a difference, thank God. But they had times over the years where even on Samsung, the local dimming, high, off, whatever, it wouldn't make any difference. It wouldn't be grayed out, but it wouldn't change anything. Now, Ratchet and Clank is a gorgeous title. Many of you request it. But you can see me go through these settings. The shortcut menu kills me a couple times. I will tell you the Samsung menu is an absolute nightmare, simply because you have to turn off the HGIG comparative setting to get game mode to be auto and on aren't the same thing. There's so many different settings in so many different places. I spent most of the time hunting those down to be able to make it look more like the Samsung, or the Sony, I should say. Now again, you see me going through Sony's menu. This is very familiar to many of you. Black adjust is missing, and I don't mean missing in the black adjust where you can make the picture brighter for shadow detail. I mean the black adjust of Sony's past, which was kind of a darkness creator, which I loved that setting over the years. Now I'll show you the differences with the Samsung moving into that more saturated preset. Now that preset is not something I calibrated. I'm not a calibrator. It's something that I'm just messing with to show you the differences. And nearly every game that I use that preset in, even though I put it together in about 5 minutes, I wanted that more than what I liked on that shortcut menu again. I appreciated the color and the ability to change the image. Now, not to mention that the Samsung has 144 Hz ultra-wide support for full bandwidth HDMI 2.1s. 144 Hz is a little dicey. They both have VRR, ALM. They have all those features. They both move very well. But keeping an eye on the Sony, I'm here trying to show you how I can make it look more like the Samsung. And it's almost like the settings won't budge. They'll keep this very natural look. Reminds me a lot how the A90J was in game mode, which still looked amazing, but even though it was an OLED, I couldn't make it look much different. Now, one of my favorite demo material games is Horizon Zero Dawn. In the very beginning of the title, here we are. Now, I believe we're back in natural here again for the, or original, I should say. I keep calling it natural. Original for the Samsung, and they look pretty similar. Beginning of this game. Very natural looking game, beautiful, very bright. The game was very ahead of its time. All we need is them to do a kill zone now for Guerrilla Games. Now as I go into the Samsung, oh, there's the original. Sorry, I was in the custom one first. There's original now, and now they look more similar. In some of these, they actually look almost identical. Now, when you change the presets, which I'll change again here, there we go. Whoa, too much. Change it back. Back to original. There we go. So I was in original and then stayed in original, and now I'm back in custom 1. Is that if you go too strongly in this game or in Horizon Zero Dawn Forbidden West, you'll clip the clouds and you'll lose the detail. You can see the detail is intact on both. But I like what I feel like is added detail in the Samsung here. Now, I want you to disagree with me and tell me which one you like better. But the point of the entire video is the ability to actually make a choice. The actual ability to change the image. As you move into Spider-Man Miles Morales, I beat the first one, did not beat the second one, which is why you're seeing the menu try to teach me how to swing. But I do like the saturation of the beginning of this title. Here we're definitely starting in that custom 1 preset on the Samsung and gaming mode on the Sony. I know because we'll switch back and you'll see that it'll look almost paler and more in line with the Sony in a minute. Now that might be too saturated. You can scale that back. I am impressed with the black levels on the Samsung as well. But I like the way the lights pop. Now, Sony's always had a very good-looking picture mode, but taking away a few of those contrast enhancers and the black adjust is a bit of a bummer. And as I went through the settings, live color didn't do a lot. Gradation preferred, brightness preferred didn't do a lot. And now they are looking more similar here. So again, the point is I can make the Samsung look like the Sony, but I can't make the Sony look like the Samsung. Now moving into a very challenging title for LEDs last year, a couple years ago, was Returnal. You would see blooming everywhere. Both the TVs are doing it amazingly since they both have their local dimming, which they were without. Here we'll start in, again, the original preset on the Samsung, and then the Sony, and then we'll switch to the more saturated one. Love that brightness in the beginning. What's funny is this game is only 1080p on PS5. It's a very cool toned game anyway, but the specular highlights are beautiful. We're nearing the end of the video. Please consider liking and subscribing. For all you guys watching this live, love you guys. And now we're going to switch back into that custom preset, and you're going to watch the Sammy be a little bit more detailed and the colors pop a bit more. Especially here in the suit and the gunfire. What do you guys think? Which do you prefer? There is no wrong answer. If you're console gaming, the Sony might be the best choice. PS5 obviously works very well with it. But for me, the Samsung just has more flexibility of image and more options in regards to its presets. We'll move into God of War 2, which I have not gotten very far in. Again, I'm more of a PC gamer, but a bit showing you a little bit how the image can look. We're going to move back in and see a bit more of the saturation here, and we'll finish with this game here. Let me know what you think in the comments, guys. Again, my use case is primarily gaming in the room that the Samsung will be in. I'm confident in this purchase, even though there are strong contenders from Hisense and TCL. But keep in mind, guys, I don't keep my TVs nearly as long as you do. I'm not marrying it forever. I am an influencer in this space, so TVs will be switched out. It's not that big a commitment. The PS5 does look really good. All right, guys, I'm Brian at Brian's Tech Therapy. Please let me know what you think in the comments. Hope you enjoyed the video. Have a great day or great evening. Love you guys. Take care.